Hey, RetconRaider here, and welcome to Phantom Doctrine by Creative Forge Games. Now, this is a game that I've been looking forward to for quite some time. It's a turn-based tactical espionage game with persistent characters and an overarching global strategy layer, all set against an anachronistic version of the Cold War. The player takes on the role of a rogue secret agent, a member of either the CIA or the KGB, who's intent on exposing a global conspiracy known as the Beholder Initiative. It's a rather unusual setting for a turn-based tactical game, but that's starting to become Creative Forge Games' thing. Their last turn-based tactical game was Hard West, a supernatural frontier western, so that really makes me wonder what niche genre they'll end up tapping into next. Anyway, there's a lot I could say about Phantom Doctrine, but I'd really rather just show you. We'll be getting started in just a second, but first, Phantom Doctrine allows me to customize my secret agent, so I'd love to include some viewers in the series. I've already started a waiting list, and if you'd like to be added to it, feel free to let me know in the comments below. Just be sure to let me know your character's name, codename, and any preferences you might have on things like gender, nationality, or physical appearance. Oh, but nothing offensive, please. Let's at least try to keep things classy. That said, let's get started. Now, there is an option for an extended campaign, but I don't think it unlocks until you've beaten the game at least once, so we'll just stick with a regular campaign for now. Next we've got difficulty, and while I have mastered the basics of the game, I'm certainly not an expert. Besides, the hardest difficulty actually disables some of the game's core mechanics, such as disposing of bodies. We'll just stick with medium for now. The rest of this looks fine, so let's move on. Next we have to set up our character, starting with choosing which organization we work for. We can choose from CIA or KGB, and our choice actually affects the storyline. There's even a third secret faction, which I'm assuming is the Beholder Initiative itself, but as it says there, we can't actually choose that option until we've beaten the campaign at least once. Since I don't speak Russian, we'll just stick with the CIA. Next we have to set up our character's real name, and I'll be honest here, this step doesn't really matter. I could try coming up with something clever, but we'd just end up having to change it the next time we swapped out our passport. The parts of your character identity that will remain consistent are your codename, your passport photo, and your physical appearance, though you can change most of those if you want to. I think this one works. Let's move on. Now we get to fine-tune our character's physical appearance. There's a decent amount of options to choose from, though not quite as many as I'd like. It's enough to avoid significant character overlap, at least at first, but you will start seeing some clones once you reach the late part of the campaign. Ooh, I like that, but that might be a bit too on the nose. Let's find something that doesn't scream, "Hey, I'm a spy." Oh, there we go. Not bad. That even goes with the pants I'm wearing. The gloves are nice, but that really does make me look like a hitman. Okay, I think we'll just save the tacky wardrobe options for our operatives. I've got to set an example. Let's see. Hats are a bit strange because they come with attached hair, and I'm pretty happy with our current haircut. We'll just pick up some other accessories instead. Oh, there we go. Let's see if we can tint those lenses. Very nice. Okay, let's go for one more accessory. And there it is. Now we're a proper spy. Though I did notice we have a tattoo. We'll need to get rid of that. That's just bad tradecraft. Looks good. Let's get started. The events you are about to see may have been buried or covered up. Those with traceable records have been marked with the specific date they occurred on. Verify at your own risk, but trust no one.
Golf Yankee Juliet uniform. Reporting contraband seized.
Understood. Break off patrol. Head back to base.
Товарищ, HMS Conqueror нарушил радиомолчание.
Что? Показать расшифровку. Побыстрее. Немедленно послать в Москву. Немедленно.
We got intel from Vladivostok. It's big, Steve.
Langley seen it yet?
No. Should they?
Hell yeah, but use the network. We don't want anyone listening in.
First the British, and now the Americans. Was there anyone else you wanted to involve in our plans?
I am handling it, Valhalla. Get out. Both of you.
Your incompetence has exposed us. Now Iceberg is in jeopardy.
Doing all of this in the open was your idea.
True. It was a simple plan that any fool could have executed. And you failed.
Gentlemen, this problem is easily solved.
Traitors!
Now, don't shout. It's bad for your heart.
Operation Threshold, East Berlin. Beholder Initiative Covert Ops, urgent, top secret. High-value cargo hijacked by British. Agent Kingfish to redeploy in UK, run recovery ops. Phase 1, enter British sector in FRG, collect necessary forms from secured location, activate sleeper asset, Rook. Further orders to be disclosed in due course. Okay, so our objectives are to locate and activate a sleeper agent, steal shipping manifests, and then evacuate safely. Sounds simple enough. Of course, this is just a tutorial mission. The whole thing is pretty heavily choreographed. Its main purpose is to teach us the basic mechanics of the game, and to introduce us to a few NPCs that we might end up encountering later in the campaign. Here we go.
I hope you have a good reason for pulling me off that RAF gig.
Absolutely. This operation is crucial to Project Iceberg.
Why are you even talking to me? You're taking an awful risk.
Nonsense. They may be expecting defectors, but not the kind of hardware you're carrying.
Ihre Papiere bitte.
Subtle.
The locator chip indicates the sleeper is in position. Are you familiar with him?
Who could forget that handsome face?
Papiere.
Okay, that brings us to our first major mechanic, action points and fire points. If you've played other turn-based tactical games, then you're probably pretty familiar with this concept already. Every character starts with 2 action points and 1 fire point, though I think it's possible to increase those numbers later in the game. Basically, action points are used for moving, reloading, picking up corpses, and fire points are used to fire weapons or activate special abilities. Don't worry, you'll pick it up pretty quickly. Now we've got our next major mechanic, restricted areas. Most missions will start in infiltration mode, which means the enemies don't know that you're a threat. But that changes pretty quickly if you do something suspicious, like walk into a restricted zone right in front of them. Fortunately, the game is all about avoiding that kind of attention. We just need to wait for the guard to move out of sight. Oh, speaking of which, you can actually see where most NPCs are planning to move by mousing over their character.
Who is this Agent Deadpan your file spoke about?
The latest CIA washout. Could be dangerous.
I sincerely doubt that.
They're actually talking about my character. Anyway, now we're up against a security camera. Just like the guards, it has a clearly defined cone of vision. If we do anything suspicious in any of those marked spaces, then the alarm will immediately go off. Fortunately, the control panel is right over here.
Deal with the security quietly. We don't want unnecessary trouble.
Thank you. I can handle myself. Ready.
We've got another guard ahead, but this one's actually the guy we're looking for.
Found our puppet.
Give him the control phrase.
This is actually one of the neater mechanics. Brainwashing people, inserting control phrases. You won't be able to play with that sort of thing during the early game, but later in the campaign, all bets are off. Okay, the shirt on a hanger icon means that Rook is effectively disguised. The other guards will still raise the alarm if they see him do something suspicious, but he's allowed to walk around in the restricted areas, which of course makes it easier to do things like this. And that brings us to our next major mechanic, the awareness system. This is essentially your character's stamina. It's used to activate special abilities, but it's also your first line of defense against being shot. Special abilities like Stealth Takedown or Headshot can be pretty effective on the battlefield, but they'll also leave you open to some pretty devastating counterattacks. Now we get to try our first support ability, in this case a spotter to help us see through the fog of war. Later in the campaign, you'll gain access to all sorts of other support abilities, snipers, grenadiers, even cleaners to help all those pesky corpses disappear.
Located the documents, but we'll have to breach the room.
Don't worry. I'll clean the mess after you.
Okay, so that brings us to the Breech Ability, which I've got mixed feelings about. It's definitely a useful ability. It causes your agents to rush into a room while taking down any guards in sight, but personally, I think it leaves your agents too vulnerable. Anyway, let's do this. Okay, so we've taken out the guards, but unfortunately, using unsilenced weapons has automatically raised the alarm. We're going to have to shoot our way out.
We've got the customs papers.
Good. Head to the evac zone. The driver will take you directly to Glasgow.
Copy. Over and out.
Notice that it takes a couple of turns for your evac to arrive. that means you really have to plan ahead.
Exfil incoming.
Now we're getting the Overwatch tutorial, and again, if you've played a turn-based tactical game before, you should be pretty familiar with this concept. One notable difference is that Overwatch can be set as a circle around your character or as a directional cone, depending on how far out you place your Overwatch marker. That's actually a pretty interesting mechanic and definitely opens up some new tactical possibilities. And as I'm sure you've already noticed, Phantom Doctrine uses a procedural combat system. There's no RNG here. Every attack will hit or miss based on the attacker's skill and the defender's awareness. Anyway, we're almost done here, so let's wrap this up. And here's the headshot ability. Like I said before, it's a pretty devastating attack, but it comes at a steep cost. It's essentially a guaranteed kill, but it also effectively leaves us defenseless. Though in this case, it doesn't really matter. There's only one enemy left, and he's too far away to actually hit us.
Mission objective complete.
Alright, we're done. Good work, Beholder Initiative. I guess. That brings us to the end of the tutorial mission, so we're ready to jump into our first real mission. Let's see how things go when they're not on rails. Unsanctioned Raid, Whitefish, Sargodha. We arrived in Pakistan to check up on their alleged nuclear program. We enter the mission area in disguise, but it isn't foolproof. Keep clear of high-ranking Pakistani troops. Do not engage unless they fire first. Confirm the existence of the fission device, then evacuate before they know we were even here. Again, simple enough, but this time the game won't be holding our hand.
You really think this Pakistani nuclear program is legit?
Leslie's usually right about these things.
Really? Shit. I bet him $10 it wasn't.
You're a hopeless dreamer, Bolt.
Found a nice landing spot. I'll wait here until you call for evac.
Good. Keep the comms to a minimum. Our disguise is pretty thin as it is.
What if Leslie calls?
I don't think he'll be joining us on this one. He's on the move.
Alright, this is the first mission of the game, and we do have the advantage of disguises, but that doesn't mean we can afford to be careless. Our first goal is to get into this restricted area here, so we can find the proof we're looking for. But there are some secondary points of interest. Like this. That's some valuable intel we can collect. And this. That's an item cache. Let's spread out and grab all that loot before we head into the airbase. We will still need to be mindful of the guards. Our disguises might fool them, but they'll still get suspicious if they see us looting weapon lockers or taking pictures of top-secret documents. Speaking of which, that guard is actually standing in a position where he'd see us if we try to loot that locker. Fortunately, he's also standing just outside the perception range of the only other guard in the room. Okay, we took out the guard, we can now loot the locker, but we've got a body on our hands. We'll have to take care of that before anyone spots it. Let's use the Dispose of Body ability. And we're clear. Granted, it would be a more realistic system if we had to manually drag or hide the body, but it's still a serviceable system. Let's make sure it's clear before we grab that intel. Okay, looks clear. There is another guy over here. And it looks like a normal soldier, so he can't see through our disguise. Okay, there's no one else nearby, so let's go ahead and take him out. That way we won't have to worry about him when we're evacuating. That's everything. Let's regroup at the front gate.
What the?
I'm pretty sure no one's going to come through the motor pool, so we'll just leave this body here. Let's have Deadpan scout out this first building while we wait for the rest of the team to catch up. Alright, we've got more intel and a security terminal. That's exactly what we're looking for. We've also got a couple of civilians to deal with, but that shouldn't be a problem. We'll need the whole team here for this.
I'm here.
Let's move Deadpan in, but he won't touch anything just yet. Actually, the guy in the radiation suit is pretty preoccupied with that terminal. We should be able to take out this scientist without being spotted.
Yeah.
My skills are at your disposal.
Okay, let's take out this other guy. Oh, actually, I don't have enough awareness. We'll have to wait until next turn.
I read you.
In the meantime, let's dispose of this body, just in case. And, let's start moving towards that intel. Yeah.
I'm here.
Now let's take this guy out. And that gives us access to the terminal. Now we should be able to get into the restricted area, though I'm sure we'll run into a few more obstacles. Oh, we've also got some more intel over there. Ah, we've also got a guard right on top of the intel, but he's by himself. One thing I did forget to mention is you won't always be able to see the map like this. If you don't do recon ahead of time, then the map will actually be obscured with fog of war. They did the recon for us this time, but we'll have to do it ourselves in the future. Alright, let's take out that guard, grab that intel, and head into the restricted zone.
I trust this is important.
Looks like we've got one more guard in sight.
Yeah.
Evening, kids. Sorry for the moment.
Got a lot of background noise. What's up?
Nothing. Lost the tail by hopping on $1 million yacht. No big deal.
Well, we're looking for the reactor. No luck. Traces everywhere, though.
It's there. Guaranteed. Keep looking.
Oh, and we've got a new optional objective, too. There's another piece of intel in this bunker here, but it sounds like we're going to have to breach to get it. Okay, well, that's going to set off the alarm, so let's take out these guards and focus on our primary objective first. We'll grab that last piece of intel on our way out. Hi.
I trust this is important.
Well, looks like he was pretty tired. Let's have Canasta take him to bed. I will say, I'm not a fan of how you have to watch this animation every time you dispose of a body. It gets pretty old pretty quickly.
I'm here.
My skills are at your disposal.
Okay, let's gather around the door here and take a peek inside.
Yeah?
No guards. Just 2 more civilians. Alright, let's regroup and we'll take them out next turn. In fact, they're pretty preoccupied. We can probably take one of them out now.
Me too.
Oh, geez. There was a third guy. Wow, we really got lucky there. I definitely have to be more careful in the future.
My skills are at your disposal.
Okay, let's take these guys out, grab that intel, and then head for the bunker.
Yeah?
What the?
Leslie, Bolt totally owes you $10. We've got a reactor and what looks like a fission device.
And the test is imminent. Get out of there, now.
Copy. We'll save some legwork if we jump over the wall from the roof here. Bolt?
I heard you. Activate your beacon now. I'll meet you at the LZ.
Not enough awareness. Okay, we'll hang out here until Durand can take out that last doctor.
Yeah?
There we go. Now we can head for the bunker.
What do you require?
Now, we're going to have to breach, so let's gather our guys around the doorway.
Yeah.
Standing by for orders.
Jiminy Christmas.
Deadpan, come in.
We're alive, Leslie.
Oh, good. All I had was static there for a minute. What happened?
The test. It didn't blow us to pieces.
Cold test then. No fissile material. But they have the technology.
Okay, now, we can't actually breach without knowing what's in the room. Fortunately, one of our guys has heartbeat sensor. That should tell us how many people are in the room and where they're standing. 3 of them, 3 of us. That's definitely doable. We should probably call in our evac soon, but we'll hold off until next turn. This should take out all 3 of these guys and clear the room, but it'll leave our guys standing in the middle of the bunker. Normally, I wouldn't feel comfortable leaving our guys exposed in a group like that, but we took out most of the guards on our way in.
Spotted.
Be careful. I have to do a ton of paperwork if you die.
For a second, I almost believed you were worried about us.
Well, they officially know we're here. Let's grab that intel and head for the evac zone. Huh. Why can't I... Oh, I see. I have to be on the other side of the table. Okay, let's get to the chopper. Ah, right. Because we breached, we can't actually put anyone on Overwatch.
Extraction order confirmed.
We'll just have to hope we got all the guards on the way in. Though, now that I think about it, we did leave at least 2 at the front entrance.
Yeah?
I read you.
Let's do this the smart way.
Standing by for orders.
We'll hug cover, watch the only entrance, and start heading for the roof. Now, Durand is carrying a light machine gun. It does massive damage, but it's also pretty unwieldy and requires an extra action point to fire. Since we're trying to stay mobile, we'll have him use his pistol for now.
Yeah?
Deadpan and Canasta, on the other hand, are carrying submachine guns. They do less damage and have less range than a light machine gun, but they also don't restrict their movement. It's also important to note that you normally can't use a disguise if you're carrying anything heavier than a submachine gun, but in this case, the game makes a special exception for Durand.
My skills are at your disposal.
Looks like it's still clear, but we still need to be careful. We're definitely going to draw some fire when we sprint across that field.
Let's cook it.
Standing by for orders. My skills are at your disposal.
Let's do this. Oh, we can actually see one of the guards right there.
Yeah.
Looks like we've got another guy back near the barracks, too. We should be able to take this guy out. He's pretty close, and he doesn't have any cover. There we go. I'm not sure we can get the other guy, though. He's pretty far away.
I'm here.
Well, Canasta took a minor wound, but definitely nothing to worry about.
Let's cook it.
There's our ride. Okay, we could try to take this last guy out, but yeah, he's just too far away.
I trust this is important.
Let's head for the chopper instead. Now, it's important to remember that when you trigger the evacuation, anyone who's not in the zone will be left behind. That means they'll almost certainly be killed or captured, so that should only be done as a last resort. Anyway, I think we're done here. Good work, team. All objectives completed. Not a bad start for a new campaign. Though it is important to remember that the game really stacks the odds in your favor on this first mission. Things only get harder from here. Chapter 1. Outfoxed. Leslie, my mentor, asked me to investigate rumors of nuclear research in Pakistan. During our incursion, we witnessed a cold test of a fission device. which means the Pakistani are at most months away from gaining nuclear capability. Somebody had to sell them the technology. That's quite a haul. Our biggest prizes are that Tier 2 submachine gun and these 2 weapon accessories here. The shotgun and pistol will certainly come in handy, but honestly, I was really hoping we'd find a pistol silencer or 2. Those are really useful, especially this early in the game. These weapons are all good in a firefight, but until they're silenced, we can't actually use them without immediately raising the alarm. We also picked up some other rewards, intel and a new recruit candidate, but we'll talk about them in just a moment. This, however, is actually pretty interesting. I've run a couple of test campaigns, but I've never actually had this contact before. From what I understand, it basically lets you call in a specialized cleaner for particularly messy missions, reducing the penalty for things like murdering civilians or having your identities compromised. Looks like Deadpan and Canasta both got new perks. We'll take care of that in a moment.
Vendor's on the line. Someone must have told him about our little trip. Put him through.
Agent Deadpan, I regret to inform you an inspection of your operations is imminent.
Why is that?
Hard to be sure, but my money is on the allegations of an unsanctioned operation in Pakistan.
I literally have no idea what you're talking about.
Leslie isn't your handler anymore. I am. Keep ignoring that, and you'll lose the squad. Fender out.
Well, he seems like a nice guy. Anyway, let's take a quick tour of the base, and then we'll call this an episode. We've got a pretty limited assortment of facilities at the moment, so this should be pretty quick. First up, we've got the crew quarters, which is where we can review our current roster of agents. It's also where we'll hire new recruits and handle our inventory management, but we'll worry about that a little later. Like I said before, all of these recruits are customizable, so I'm hoping to replace them with viewers as soon as I get the chance. We just need to build the appropriate facility first. Every character also comes with a background trait and secret perks, as well as at least one training suite, which is what determines their starting weapon proficiencies. Not only does that improve the performance of the weapon, but it's also required if you want to equip special weapon accessories. Let's take care of those new perks. Now, every time a character gains a new perk, they're given a choice of 4 to choose from. The overall pool is relatively limited, but there are a decent number of options for both offense and defense. While some aspects of a character can be retrained, this choice is permanent, so it's important to choose something that fits the character. In this case, we'll go with combat awareness. Extra awareness is always useful. Next, we have to choose a perk for Deadpan, but he already has several bonus starting perks. He can craft faster, he gains bonus experience for recon missions, and because he's the player character, he can't be converted by enemy factions. Now let's take a look at what else he has to choose from. Faster movement. That's potentially useful. Faster carry speed. Not bad, but faster movement is better. And bonus hit points. That one's actually deceptively useful. As we saw earlier, stealth takedowns require you to have a higher hit point total than the target you're trying to knock out, which makes a perk like Survivor vital for later missions. Your agents will rarely have any trouble knocking out mooks or random civilians, but once enemy agents are on the field, things change pretty quickly. In fact, I don't think there's any contest here. We'll definitely take Survivor. That covers most of the basics, but let's take a look at the hiring menu. Like I said before, this is where you can hire new recruits, but it's an expensive and dangerous process. Every time you hire a new agent, it increases the risk of exposing your base's location, so you have to be careful about how you time recruiting new agents. Danger can also be increased in other ways, such as by botching a mission, allowing one of your agents to be captured, or through special enemy actions. If you ever let your danger get too high, then you need to relocate your base immediately. Otherwise, you'll end up suffering severe consequences. And speaking of consequences, our next stop is the Infirmary. Not much to say here. This is where your agents recover from injuries. Next we've got the workshop, which is where you can build equipment for your agents or purchase upgrades or new facilities for your headquarters. Your starting selection is pretty limited, but you'll unlock new tech upgrades as you advance the main story. In this case, I think we'll start with the Forager Facility, which is required if you want to customize your agents. That's obviously a pretty high priority for me, but it's also important if you want to forge other things, like passports or money. We can also make items, but again, this early in the game, our selection is pretty limited. Let's get started on some lockpicks. That finally brings us to Analytics, which is where we analyze all those top secret documents we collect during our missions. This is actually something the tutorial can explain better than I can, so let's run through that real quick. Okay, so this is our intel board, which is where we gather all the files relevant to each of our investigations. Our job is to create connections between these files, until we've created enough connections to essentially solve that investigation. It's a pretty interesting little minigame, but not quite as deep as it looks at first glance. Since most of these files are procedurally generated, a lot of it just comes down to luck. Sometimes you'll be able to solve an investigation with just a handful of relevant files, but other times you'll need to find every file in the set before you can create the right series of connections. Sometimes you'll also have to manually analyze a document. They make for some interesting reading, but the text is largely irrelevant. Your goal is just to pick out key phrases, code names, organizations, things like that. Then you use those key phrases to create more connections. Alright, connections complete. If this were a real intel board and not just a tutorial, this is where we'd receive some sort of special reward. Now let's see here. Okay, we're looking for an organization name. Not that. There we go, Steel Grip. Oh, and Snowcat, that's an obvious code name. That unlocks the intel board, so let's see if we can make some connections. First things first, let's organize our files and see what we're working with. Well, we've got less than half the files in this set, so we're probably not going to be able to resolve it right now. Still, we might as well get started on it. Let's analyze this file. Okay, Folk Hero, Cornerstone, and Jerry Melendez. Now let's see if that actually creates any new connections. Alright, we're not even close to solving this investigation, but that's fine. We'll just have to find more files. Now, there is a whole lot more to talk about, but for now, I think we've reached a good stopping point for this episode. Next time, we'll take our first look at the global strategy layer and go on our first real mission. But for now, hopefully this has been enough to give you a good general idea of what to expect from Phantom Doctrine. For what it's worth, I've really enjoyed playing Phantom Doctrine over the past couple of days, and I'm definitely looking forward to playing it more in the future. But for now, this is RetconRaider, signing off. Thanks for watching. Oh, and remember, although I do love playing Phantom Doctrine, you can find out more about the game by visiting the official website, the official YouTube channel, or the store page on GOG or Steam. As always, links are in the description.